Thank you so much, Jimmy. What a panel. Brad Bao, the founder of Lime, and Sylvia from Free Now, and Roger from Shell, and Karen. Such a pleasure. Truly, truly phenomenal discussion, and absolutely delighted to have you with us. Coming up next, panel discussion on innovative finance and its impact on engineering a paradigm shift towards a green economy transition and SDGs.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to contribute to the Global Impact Week on behalf of the organization that I lead as Director General, the Global Green Growth Institute, or GGI. Allow me to briefly introduce GGI, as we are still a young intergovernmental organization with headquarters in Seoul, Korea, established some 10 years ago to support our member countries to accelerate the transition to a model of economic growth that is environmentally sustainable and socially inclusive. That is what we refer to as green growth. We currently have 41 member countries and over 20 countries on the road to accession. So we work with over 60 countries. We support our members to develop green growth strategies and policies, now often focused on the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions for the Paris Agreement, and climate adaptation plans. And then we develop bankable investment projects to implement those policies and mobilize green and climate finance for their implementation. This year alone, we have mobilized over $5 billion in green finance through green bonds issued with our support in Peru and Mexico, and to finance clean energy investment projects we developed in Colombia, Senegal, and India, to name a few. GGI's model is to place green growth advisors and experts embedded in the ministries of the 30+ countries where we operate, and that is where 80% of our 500 staff and consultants work. In 2020-2021, we supported 29 of our member countries to increase the ambition of their nationally determined contributions for the Paris Agreement, to reduce emissions by 2030, and worked with our members to put in place net zero targets for 2050. So my assessment of the Glasgow COP26 result is that it demonstrated significant progress over the last 6 years since the Paris Agreement. Based on the commitments made at that time, global warming would have peaked at 2.7 degrees. In just 2 years since the IPCC published its 1.5 degree report, now over 90% of the world population and 90% of global GDP is covered by net zero pledges. Net zero by 2050 is what the science says gives us a reasonable chance to avoid heating worse than 1.5 degrees. And the International Energy Agency estimated during COP26 that if all net zero pledges are implemented, warming would be limited to 1.8 degrees. So from 2.7 to 1.8 degrees is what I call significant progress. Of course, it depends on whether the somewhat vague net zero pledges are now translated into concrete commitments and backed up by concrete policies and investments. While I'm aware that much work needs to be done in many countries to deliver these net zero pledges, from the example of South Korea, where I live and where GGI has its headquarters, I am optimistic. In Korea, the net zero pledge made in October last year was put into law by the National Assembly in August this year, and the NDC target Korea has made to the UNFCCC to reduce emissions by 2030 has increased its ambition up to 40% reduction by 2030. Working with government as well as the private sector, from banks to industry, we see the concrete plans to achieve net zero being put together. Again, that is real progress and an example that GGI, working with the Korean government, will aim to follow in other GGI member countries around the world. While it is GGI's primary focus to support our member governments, in practice, we work a lot with the private sector to implement the government's green policies, to develop bankable clean energy projects, and to mobilize finance. When governments have the right enabling environment with stable policies to provide or enable land allocation, and they have a high quality power purchase agreement and appropriate feed-in tariff, we believe we can generally develop grid-connected solar and even wind energy projects that are bankable and will attract private sector financing. A key risk deterring private investment in developing countries can be the creditworthiness of the off-taker. Reducing private sector risk to acceptable levels using concessional finance or guarantees can then be an effective mitigating action. In some cases, governments need to be convinced to end policies that are not conducive to clean energy uptake. Limits on rooftop solar or subsidized fossil fuel electricity rates can be important obstacles. Working with government to replace a subsidized fossil fuel electricity rate targeting low-income households with, for example, a subsidy for rooftop solar panels targeting the same income group can then be a practical solution. For Africa, where access to reliable energy is still low, providing access to clean energy for all can be combined with increasing resilience to climate change and building back better from the pandemic. GGI is working with the governments of Ethiopia, Uganda, Senegal and Burkina Faso, for example, to increase the adoption of solar-powered irrigation. In existing irrigation, this can replace the use of fossil fuel imported at high cost, such as in Senegal, and where solar irrigation replaced rain-fed agriculture, it is a critical opportunity to increase resilience against drought and provide increased income and employment for rural areas. This is a key investment opportunity that needs to be scaled up in the next 5 to 10 years. Rooftop solar is another good opportunity that can be financed through the private sector if the right enabling environment exists. GGI is working with the government of Senegal, for example, to prepare a project to put solar on the rooftops of its public buildings, cutting emissions and lowering the cost of energy significantly. In Ethiopia, GGI worked with the Industrial Park Authority to put solar on the rooftops of the industrial buildings and was able to find a Danish private investor. In Colombia, GGI worked with a private project developer this year to convince InBev, the world's largest beer company, to invest $250 million to put solar panels on the roofs of 30,000 off-grid rural stores that sell their Bavaria beer. In India, we could find private investors willing to invest in solar energy along the new Mumbai to Nagpur highway, another $250 million investment. A little more difficult, but more and more feasible, is to develop bankable projects for community-scale solar mini-grids with battery storage, preferably combined also with solar pumping for drinking water and irrigation. Such integrated clean energy projects at scale are a massive investment opportunity across Africa, and GGI believes that working closely with governments, the private sector, and financial institutions, this can and should be scaled as essentially commercial investment opportunities, with a minimum of slower and more difficult to access concessional finance and climate finance to mitigate investment risks. Not as easy to fund with private capital are projects to adapt to climate change in developing countries, or to rehabilitate the forests, peatlands, and mangroves that can be effective carbon sinks and maintain or restore biodiversity. That is where green development assistance and climate finance still has a very important role to play. GGI works to increase the access of our member countries to climate finance. Climate finance, that is the $100 billion in development assistance committed by developed countries to enable developing countries to deal with climate change. We support more than 30 of our members to get direct access to the Green Climate Fund, for example, the world's largest climate finance facility, also located here in Korea. In addition, green finance is a real opportunity to mobilize finance to implement climate action from private capital markets. As I mentioned, for renewable energy projects, we see more private capital available than there are high-quality bankable projects. That is why we at GDGI focus on the development of a pipeline of bankable green investment projects. Our GDGI pipeline of projects under development is worth some $5 billion and growing rapidly. Green bonds, climate bonds, or sustainable bonds are an emerging opportunity to raise private finance committed to green projects. This is still a very small share of the total bond market, but we expect to see this grow rapidly in coming years. And GDGI is working with some 10 countries, developing countries, to put in place the necessary policies, such as green bond frameworks, to enable them to issue their first green bonds, as Peru did very successfully this year. While the public sector development assistance, the climate finance, is counted in billions, the private sector green finance is an opportunity at the scale of trillions. And that is what we need to finance the global green transition. Both public and private sector will need to work together to deliver net zero. Well, we're currently living through a pandemic, as well as an unprecedented sustainability crisis, involving not only the climate crisis, but air pollution, plastic, and a scary loss of biodiversity. I'm optimistic that public awareness of this crisis that is threatening our planetary boundaries has increased significantly during the pandemic, particularly among young people. And voters demanding that their leaders take the climate crisis more serious is in the end the most hopeful sign I see that we will be able to turn the corner towards a green growth world. Political will is going to be critically important to maintain, as technology and finance are going to be available, I believe, if voters and leaders point the way. I thank you.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Penha-Lopes from the Faculty of Science, University of Lisbon, and I'll be here speaking to you about regenerative design and how to see the innovation in financing able to take us into a sustainable future. I'm going to show you a little presentation. Here it is. It's about how to do regenerative development and design, how to support innovating the financial thinking to regenerate the economy and reach the SDGs and potentially even go beyond the SDGs. Just to remind us that we come from, so we are in this living planet, this blue marvel navigating in space, and this is until now the only planet that is alive with all its complex systems. So for me, it's really important that we start from this recognition that we are in a planet that is alive and beautiful. Also, that in these planets, more than 4,000 million years ago, life started spawning, and then it has this impulse that takes into building complexity. And so from one little first cell and through a lot of cycles, now we reach the society we have today. And the society, the ecosystem, the biospheres, all these diversity in all these different places, deep ocean, atmosphere, mountains, warm and deserts to glaciers. We are finding life in all places, and as complex as the Amazon and other coral reefs. So it's important that we acknowledge that we have this impulse in these living planets, and we humans have as well. So in the last 100,000 years, we have also been developing complexity and ways of being together in tribes, communities, and now as a global community as we see it today. However, the question is about how come now taking into the planetary boundaries and now the donut economics also with the social components, how are we reaching these levels? So we are basically, this is a diagnosis that it's showing is that the world as we know it and our society is in jeopardy, and it has multiple crises happening at the same time. So if we would go into the doctor, let's say, it would be very serious. We wouldn't be leaving the hospital, let's say, until we manage at least find the harmony in many of these boundaries. So we know that the system is alive, and as well as on Earth, the human system it also has the impulse not only to evolve, but to find this harmony and this health. So it's important that we also start understanding how the system operates and all these feedback loops in order to sustain its vitality, its viability, and its ability to evolve. And the thing is, if we stay with the same level of paradigm that created the problems, we are just creating bigger problems, more and bigger problems. And this is what the talk of today will be about. It's about how to shift our way of thinking in order to operate also in a different way, to be and operate. And to show you, this is a graphic from Daniel Wall. The thing is that most of our work in society, so considering that we are coming from a conventional practice that it's leading us to all these issues, is that we have this green level, which is about improving a bit, becoming more efficient, using a bit less resources, a bit less beds in a way. The sustainability level, which is about, this is giving us a cognitive evolution or consciousness. Sustainability, it's about these neutral points. It's like to sustain. Now, today, sustainability lost a lot of these long-term 7 generations grounding, and it's now about just sustaining what exists. Beyond, and this is where probably most of also the SDGs are also taking us forward. Beyond that, we have a lot of other systems. Restorative, which is about building things into balance, vitality and viability, the ecosystems, the seas, all these different, the economy. How can we restore? So it's more than just sustaining. We bring it to a place where it's healthy. The reconciliatory, it's about when we humans start seeing us as part of nature and understanding how nature operates. So we bring also that into our design. And the regenerative components, it's where we are able to create systems that are not only vital and viable and are able to evolve, but they also support other systems to become regenerative. So as all life. And this is also now to look at the SDGs in this way. So we have the biosphere, which for me it's non-negotiable because it sustains all the other levels. Then on top of this, we have the societal SDGs that we aim to reach, and that's what will bring us some robustness in our society, on which you can develop an economic system that supports, of course, ripples down all the other levels as well. So the economy needs to be built in natural laws. So economy, it's about the rules of the house, of the planet that we also saw. And of course, all of this is done in partnership. So for example, this is a way of how I see the SDGs. So in order for us to shift the culture we are living in or that we want to create and the desired effects, it's about us looking for different results and impacts. And in order to do that, we need to perform different actions. And in order to perform different actions, we need to go beyond the thoughting, which is about us thinking that we are thinking about an issue and coming up with new results, but it's just copy paste. It's like a good practice, best practice, and so on and so forth. We need to go beyond that and start thinking about what are we thinking about. For example, the SDGs brought us a kind of a holistic view. So we think about more things, but sometimes we still apply most of the linear, mechanic, fragmented thinking when thinking about the SDGs. We need to start taking into attention how we think about what are the process behind our thinking. So to put the thinking process in question. And it's about changing this. This is where the paradigm of thinking is shifted, so we can solve problems at the higher order than the ones that we created, higher order thinking that we created them. And in order to think about in a different way, we need new context. We need places that takes us out of the comfort zone and show us that some of our assumption premises, so our coding of programming, this human thoughtware coding, needs to shift, needs to evolve. It's a kind of an operative system upgrade that we need to go through in order to solve the situation where we are in. And so it's fundamental to have new competencies if we want to live in new paradigms. Just to bring you some of the, within the regenerative development, some of the principles, and this is the ones presented by Carol Sanford, the 7 principles of regeneration. So we have the essence, so we have the wholes here. I'm going to start by the wholes. So it's important that we start looking at the whole piece, the whole territory, the globe, the municipality, the company as a whole entity. Okay, and not as fragments that we can improve here and there. The second one is about the essence. So it's important that we recognize and respect and nurture the essence of each individual, of each organization, of each territory, because it's fundamental. It's only on the essence that people are able to express fully. The territory is the same way, the ecosystem the same way. Looking at potential instead of problems. So looking at what it could be about if we see everything as a whole, if we come from our essence, what's the potential that wants to emerge? The fourth is about development. So this is a developmental path. It's about putting our way of thinking always in jeopardy. So be always conscious about how we are thinking. How can we develop more competences in order for us to better work as a whole, better be at our essence, see more potential? It's fundamental. Nestedness is about seeing the systems within the system. So in my body, I have the cells, which are in tissues, which are in organs, which are in the organism, which I belong then to family or community in the territory, which is then a water basin, and so on and so forth. I could go into the family and then the community, and I'm part of also organization. So it's important to see how things are nested within other systems, and all of them need to be functioning well, and they communicate both ways. Okay, the more healthy I am, then the better the cells within me, and as well my role as a father, or as my role in the community or in the society as well. Then nodal interventions. So it's important for us to understand that the system has nodal points, which means like acupuncture. If I give attention or change a small aspect or an element of a system, of how it operates or when it operates and so on, this element is able to shift an entire system with very little effort. And this is very important. So it's the same for the mechanic as the leverage point, the mechanic paradigm. In the living system is a nodal point where several things connect and one point affects many parts of the system. And the last one that Carol brings about is the field. So more than trying to bring best practices and good practices and so on, like solutions, is about creating a field of care where we allow all the other six principles to express healthy. And so just to bring about that the system is only alive when it's supported, when it's able to be healthy and bring to life a similar system that it's also able to evolve. So with the question I would leave this presentation is about how might we evolve our financing innovations thinking so that we develop a regenerative economy that takes us beyond fulfilling the SDGs. And thank you. I hope that this presentation was useful to challenge a bit our way of thinking. And again, thank you so much for this organization, and hopefully to also see and talk to many of you. Thank you.
Wonderful discussions, and 12 hours amazing agenda have slipped away. Now it's the end of day 3 of Webbit Global Impact Week, focused and dedicated on the Planet Guardians. We had phenomenal discussions and truly inspirational talks. And I would say, I wish this day never ends, because I've learned and I've been inspired by all of these amazing participants during the whole day. I will not be able to mention all of them, but just to say a few names which made such a huge impact on me. And even today, I started thinking that I could have done something better. We as a company and foundation and my investments, and we as a community at Webbit, starting with Judith and her moderating, Florence from the South Systems, and Harry from Signify. And then we had a fantastic keynote by Bill McKibben, American environmentalist, and then further about nature loss, sustainability, and well-being with Angela from New York, and Andreas from WWF, and Eric from National Geographic Society, Justin from One Earth Philanthropy, and then we had further zero carbon emission with Lucas Joppa, Chief Environmental Officer at Microsoft. Further, we continued with UN Refugee Agency, the Special Advisor for Climate Action, Andrew Harper, and Cody Sims, and April O'Reilly from Weekend, the Woman, Earth and Climate Action, with the Blue and the Planet is Thirsty panel, moderated by our friend J. Carter Cantor, together with the founder of Oceans 2050, with the CEO of the Ocean Agency, and Friends of Ocean Action, Sustainable Ocean Alliance, and Clean Energy Innovation and Sustainable Transformation. Moderated by Solon Mobile, and the participation of Chief Innovation Officer of Enel, and more and more and more, of course, not to forget the Chief Marketing Officer and Solutions at SAP, Julia White. It's been such a day with Eric Simon at Worldwide Fund, with Tommy at Green Hope. So many amazing speakers. The topic about the food systems was particularly close to my heart, with Shreen and the Alep Farms, and the WWF, the president of the markets, Jason Clay, and the CTO of the Prospera. Fantastic. I really do not want to see this ending, but here we are at the end of day 3. Stay with us. We are moving next. I just don't want to miss the opportunity to say thank you to Jennifer, Executive Director at Greenpeace International, Sharon Barbero from the Secretary General of International Trade Union, David Janssen, head of the Environmental Peace Building Program of UN. So many amazing people. Brad Bao, the founder and executive chairman of Lime, and Sylvia Fisher from President Smart Mobility Free Now, and Roger Hunter, renewable energy at Shell. Really amazing lineup. Beautiful Webbit community. It's been such a pleasure and honor to be your host again today during the third day of Webbit Global Impact Week, with so many of you, over 100,000, with dynamic discussions on the TVS-powered platform for events, the best in the world, powering governments and major UN events. Now, tomorrow is a very special day for me because, as you may know, my topic, AI in healthcare, is the theme of my PhD thesis. Tomorrow we are talking about healthcare. The single most important reason for all of us to be happy. There's no happiness without health. But above all, the most important part of where technology is making and is going to make huge breakthroughs in the next, most probably decade, when, as some of the futurists predict, we shall become closer and closer to gods, or even stronger than gods. Not only futurists, but anthropologists. So now, let's see where the day tomorrow will bring us. But I promise you, it's going to be equally challenging and really very inspirational. So I see you tomorrow morning, 10:30 Central Eastern European time, all together again as part of Global Webbit Impact Week, Day 4, Healthcare.